Welcome, friends. Welcome back to Ursa Medica. And today I am in a slightly different kind of a mood in terms of also the content that I wish to talk about. You know, it. You know, it's a good day here in Mumbai, and I was studying the divisional charts, and particularly the D30 is what has been occupying my mind in the last few days. I have been looking at the D30 of various kundalis, the Varga chart pertaining to various different natives, uh, particularly with reference to medical astrology. And, I just wanted to speak a little bit about D30 today, which, it is a chart which is seldom studied because normally we will look at the D1 chart, we'll look at the D9 chart. And very rarely we may look at the D3 chart. But the D30, what exactly does it do? What is its purpose? The D30 is also called the Trimsamsa, as you know, the 30th part. So therefore, let's look at that in a little bit detail today. And I have a few empirical kundalis I want to show you what the D30 really means. Okay, welcome back. And I'm starting my screen sharing now. One second. Let me just find out this file for you. Okay, I'm now sharing this. You can see my screen, I'm sure. Right. So we are talking of the D30 here. And D30 also called as the Trimsamsa. And it's a Varga Kundali. It is one of the Shodasha Varga Kundalis as propounded by Rishi Parashar. Okay. So couple of things to talk about the D30 before we really get into the thing. Now, if you notice, the divisional charts which are routinely studied as a Shodasha Varga in Parashar. So you study D1, D3, you study D1, D2, D3, D9, D12, D20, D24, D30, D40, D45, and D60. So we study all these charts, right? So the chart ends at D60, typically what we study in the Parashar system. So if you notice, 60 is a fifth multiple of 12. So 12 into 5 is 60. So therefore, each of these charts, like when you look at a chart, they fall within some kind of a band or some kind of a zone of influence. So you are aware of the koshas of the body, right? The koshas. So therefore, so the body is made up of different koshas. So we start with the Annamaya Kosha, which is the level of the body, the physical body, that what we consider as what that can be touched, that is what suffers physical pleasure, physical pain. That is the Annamaya Kosha. Now the divisional charts of D1 to D12 fall within the Annamaya Kosha. Okay, so therefore we are talking here of D1, D2, D3, D9, and D12. Okay. The charts which fall from D13 or D12 onwards till D24 fall in what is called as the Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha is the sheath. Kosha is a sheath. Pranamaya is the sheath of prana. It is that which animates the tissues. It is that what makes us living. That's the Pranamaya Kosha. We are all aware of the yogic kriya such as pranayam, which basically is about utilizing the prana for better health. So from D13 to D24, that's the the charts falling within that scheme or within that zone are basically related to the Pranamaya Kosha. So here you have, of course, D20, okay, and you have D24 also, right? And then, of course, we come to the third kosha, which is the Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha, and then, of course, the next kosha will be the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and finally the Anandamaya Kosha. So therefore, if you look at the Manomaya Kosha, the influence is from the third octave of the Varga Kundali. So the influence is from D24 to D36, in which you find D27, okay, which is called the Bhausha, okay, or Sapta Vimshausha, okay, and which is related more to about the strength, the inherent strength, because you have 27 nakshatras and therefore D27. And D30 also falls in this, which is the Trimsamsa. We'll talk about that in detail, and that basically comes under the Manomaya Kosha. So the Manomaya Kosha is the sheath of the mind. The mind as in the feeling mind, the sentimental mind, the emotional mind, the mind which is also influenced by rationality and irrationality. So it is said that Manaiva Manushyanam Karanam Bandhana Moksha Yoho, that the mind of a man or mind of a human being is the source of both bondage and liberation. So here, therefore, Trimsamsa falls in the Manomaya Kosha. So therefore, it will have something to do with how life occurs to the native through the mind. Now remember, this is the Manomaya Kosha. It is, it is kind of below the surface. It is below the surface. There could be, for example, we have sometimes a deep embedded kind of a submerged desires, submerged fears. Somebody has some fear of heights, unknown fear of heights. Somebody has fear of dark spaces. Somebody is extremely phobic about talking in public life or talking in front of an audience. So there are these fears or these kinds of various mental tendencies which kind of operate below the surface. They are subconscious tendencies. I wouldn't even call them mental tendencies. They are tendencies which are instinctual, which in a way are self-created, self-inflicted in a sense. So therefore, D30 stands for this. Now notice that when you divide D30 or 30 by 12, the quotient is 6. So 12 to the 24 plus 6. So assuming you complete 2 octaves, and again you come from Lagna to the 6th house. So what happens is this, therefore the D30 is kind of, you can say, a Sukshma Bhava or a Sukshma house or a Sukshma Kundali pertaining to the 6th house in a way. Okay, so therefore this, and the 6th house stands for disease, stands for disturbances, stands for debt, stands for enemies, certainly. So therefore, when you combine this aspect of the 6th house with the earlier mentioned subconscious, subliminal, instinctual aspect of D30, you realize the actual karakatva, you actually realize the signification of D30. So therefore, D30 chart can show accumulative tendencies which are accumulated in the psyche of a person, in the Manomaya Kosha of the person, and therefore tendencies which can create a certain kind of a chronicity, which can create some kind of a long-standing dysfunctional behavior, for example. Just to give one example, okay? And also, it can create chronic disease of a kind or some kind of a misfortune with respect to disease. So the D30 is also called the Varga, the misfortune, the Varga for misfortune. So it has a significance in medical astrology. So this is what I wanted to talk about the D30. Now, what I really want to do is I want to actually show you a few charts, correct? So that will give you a good idea about, I will show you a few charts which can give you some decent idea about the kind of findings that D30 can actually signify, right? So a moment, please. Right. So, if I were to now share with you the screen again. Now here is the Parashar Light software screen. And what I've done really is I have actually accumulated a few charts here, about 5 charts, and just to kind of demonstrate this, some of these people are very recent, some of these people are really ancient. Okay, and of course, who does not know Amitabh Bachchan? So let's start with Amitabh Bachchan now first. Now, Amitabh Bachchan's chart is kind of in the public domain. Born on 11th October 1942 at 4 p.m. Allahabad, India. Now, if you look at his D30. Before that, now what I want to really look at here is the moon. I will be studying specifically the moon in D30, because that is what gives you an idea about what is troubling the person, or what is the accumulated tendency of a person, what gives him his particular kind of mental flair, if I may say so. Now, if you look at the D1 chart, because obviously we have to look at the promise first in the natal chart and then go to the divisional chart. If you look at the D1 chart, the moon is very well placed. It's in, it's in basically Libra. And, the nakshatra is actually mentioned is kind of wrong, because it is 10 degrees, 20 minutes of Libra. It has to be Swati, second pada of Swati. But so therefore, if you see here, or rather first pada of Swati, sorry. So, yeah, so if you see now let's say the D9 chart of Amitabh Bachchan, you will see that the moon is second pada of Swati, therefore it is in Capricorn Navamaush. It is with Ketu and placed well. So D1 placement of moon is very well. Libra in the 9th house. Okay, so 6th lord in the 9th house is a good placement. It gives a certain level of mental strength. If you see D9 moon with Ketu gives a certain level of detachment also. It also gives a certain level of philosophy, a philosophical mind in a way. And we know that from Amitabh Bachchan, that when he particularly talks about his father, and when he talks about, for example, when he recites Madhushala, and when he writes his blogs and his tweets, you can make out that the man is, has a tendency to sometimes philosophize or go deep. So you have the D9 chart here. Moon is in Kendra. Okay, in D1 it is in Kona. So good placement of the moon. Now let's look at the D30. Now D30, you find moon is with Rahu and Ketu together again in the 9th house. So this gives a kind of a moon which is famous, a mind which is famous, but also a mind which is kind of detached, because you have moon with Rahu and Ketu. And Ketu in Sagittarius is kind of exalted. I mean, although here Ketu Rahu come together, but then one realizes that this placement of moon is again very good. So therefore, now when we look at the Trimsamsa, one sees that this is a man with a powerful mind, with a mind which is calm, balanced, equanimous, somewhat detached. And because of this detachment, and because of this sort of, you can say, balanced approach, this man has been able to survive for so long at the highest level. And actually, he is the reigning superstar of Bollywood, and he's been able to recover from some massive health problems because of his inherent strength of his D30. Okay, we will not be looking at other aspects of the D30, but quickly note that the Mars is exalted here. Okay, and Venus is exalted here. Okay, and you see Jupiter Venus exchange of houses, Jupiter in Taurus, Venus in Pisces exalted. So all in all, this is a very powerful chart. The D30 testifies to Amitabh Bachchan. Okay, so with this now, I am now showing you another chart, that of a top level politician, statesman, president of a country, one who is stacked on one side and all the other countries are on the other side. Yes, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin, also a known dictator, an autocrat, with a lot of, with basically a man of power. Okay, so we're looking at Vladimir Putin, and we'll look at his moon first again, and we'll go to the D30 later. First, we'll look at the D1, D9 as is customary. Again, I'm only looking at the moon here, and the ability of the moon to recover, or the ability of the moon to be disease free, or to have certain tendencies which can trouble. So here now you look at the moon. Moon is exalted in Taurus in the 8th house. It's actually pretty close to the maximum exaltation point of 3 degrees Kritika. So it's very close to that. So that's one. The 8th house moon, of course, is a moon of intrigue, although exalted, but therefore this is a moon capable of a lot of backhand deals, secret plots, various kinds of things, Chechnya, Ukraine, all of that. But this is a moon of a very powerful human being. If you look at this chart, you'll realize how powerful this chart is. We will not discuss this chart, but very briefly, let me just tell you that he has a Venus in Mool Trikona in ascendant, and he has a Jupiter-Mars exchange of houses involving the 3rd and the 7th house. And there are so many other things, but we will not get into that right now. Okay, now let's continue to focus on his moon and his D9. Now in the D9, you realize that the moon is with an exalted Venus, again with Ketu. Okay, so here you have a man who is a kind of a philosopher, in a sense that he is deeply influenced by tradition, by some kind of almost like an ancient birthright of the Russian Empire. One can say that, and at the same time, there is a certain level of enthusiasm and love of luxury and all that. So you have a moon in Pisces in D9 with Venus there exalted, right? So you see that it's a moon which is not in a very great position. It is neither Kendra nor Kona as far as the both D1 and D9 are concerned. It's a little bit of awkward moon, but it has very powerful friends. It has very powerful friends. Okay, so therefore, like Venus, for example, although the relation of Venus and moon in the D1 is Shadashtak, 6-8 relationship, but in D9 it kind of evens out. Now let's look at the D30. Okay, now the D30 here, you can quickly see here that the moon is in Kendra. Is in Kendra. It is in Mercury's house, as in it is in the sign of Virgo. It has a sort of a you can say Labha relationship, like a 3-11 relationship with what we call Mercury, and we notice that even the D1, moon and Mercury have a Navam Pancham Yoga. It's like they are at trines from each other. So they are, and if you notice, Mercury is in the nakshatra of the moon. It is in Hasta. Okay, so that's a very interesting thing. Okay, now, so therefore, moon is well placed in general. And although there is no direct aspect on the moon, say by Jupiter or whatever, but in general, moon is well placed. And moon also has here what is called as a Sunafa Yoga, because there is Jupiter in its 2nd house in the D30. So it's a well supported moon, just to give you an idea. Now let's quickly go to Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, this is a man who is evidently a very disturbed man. He is a man who is fighting Russia, with all the help he can get. He is begging, cajoling Western countries to give him arms. He's fighting. Some people might even argue that in the process of getting demolished and destroyed by Russia, he's probably putting the lives of the population of Ukraine, at stake. So this is a man who is deeply disturbed, certainly. Let's look at his chart and see, let's see what gives him his courage and his recklessness, howsoever you may want to interpret it. Now look at his D1. You have a moon and a Mars together in the same house. Mars is debilitated. Okay. Moon is in Ashlesha. Okay, so Ashlesha, you will notice that the Ashlesha victims, the Ashlesha natives, basically the moon nakshatra Ashlesha, they would be people, they have a certain sting in their mind. They will not easily forgive. The nakshatra devata, the deity is Sarpa. And therefore, and also the nakshatra lord is Mercury. Now, here you have a moon and Mars together in D1 that indicates a man who will not forgive and a man who will be vicious if necessary. He will be violent, mentally violent. Now, if you look at D9, sorry, you see here that the moon is in the 8th house, and moon is not in dignity. Moon is actually, one could call it, it's out of dignity. It is, it's in kind of like the enemy house in a way, because the own house is Cancer, it is in Capricorn. So it's a bad moon. Now, also you notice here that the relation of moon and Mercury in the D1 chart is again 6-8 relationship, which is not good. In the D9, again, you find that moon and Mercury are, like what we call 1-4 relationship, again, which is not kind of good. There is no aspect of one on the other. Okay, and the moon again here is unsupported. There's no aspect of Jupiter, for example, in D9. It's just kind of out of dignity. It is in enemy house in the 8th house, in the enemy Rashi. So therefore, it's a moon which is capable of making mistakes or capable of reacting prematurely. Now let's look at the D30. Now here you find the problem, clearly indicative. The moon is in the 12th house with Neptune and Pluto. Okay. Now, a Neptune with moon together in the D30 in the 12th house indicates massive kind of illusory kind of a effect on the moon by Neptune. Remember, this is a very, very fine divisional chart. So therefore, the moon Neptune influences, they are together practically. Neptune would create confusion, would create a sort of a megalomania, would create a unreasonable, illogical dreams. We will capture Crimea back. These kinds of situations, for example. So therefore, you see that the moon is affected very badly. It's in the 12th house. And again, there is no beneficial aspect of any planet here. Now, the point also to note here is the 8th house. You see, I'm although we are looking at the moon, but I cannot resist talking about the 8th house here. You have a Mars, Gulika, and a Sun. You have two high-grade malefics. You have a retrograde Mars and Sun with Gulika. 3 malefics in the 8th house. Okay. Looking at Venus, Rahu, and Ketu from the 2nd house. So and a kind of a misguided Jupiter in the 3rd house in Aries, which is actually creating a lot of courage, but which is not really making a positive difference as far as this situation is concerned. So you have here the 2nd house also could indicate problems at home, problems in the family. When we talk of family, we can also look at this in the mundane context of the family, as in the Ukraine family or the Ukrainian people themselves, that is the second house, you have Rahu Ketu there. All is not well. And then you have the 8th house where clouds of death are sort of are meandering or hovering over your head. And you have the moon again. And by the way, the moon in the 12th house here is in the enemy house in Capricorn with Neptune. Okay, so here you see the effect of D30. Okay, now 2 more charts. I just decided to kind of go a little back, and I picked two rulers. One of them perceived as very benevolent. I'm talking of Emperor Akbar. And the second ruler perceived as, or with historical precedent of being basically extremely brutal, particularly to the majority, Hindu majority in India. That is Aurangzir. So we are talking first of Akbar. Akbar was born in 1542, morning 9 minutes after 4 in Umarkot, Sindh, Pakistan. Now, you will realize that this time is very close to the Brahma Muhurta. And you realize that Akbar's horoscope is exceptionally gifted. Okay, so he was actually somebody who was really gifted. Now, here you see the chart here. In the D1 chart, you see Moon and Rahu practically conjunct in the 5th house. Okay. Now, when you look at, and you have, of course, the aspect of Jupiter. Jupiter's 5th aspect is on the Moon. So he was always very, very stable, extremely ambitious, but at the same time, simultaneously very stable kind of a Moon. You see Navamhouse Kundali now D9. And you see that Moon is again with Rahu, sort of. So Moon Rahu conjunction continues in D9. Now, of course, it's not Vargottam, but it is in now fiery sign Sagittarius. And you see Venus is again in the Lagna. So that, and you have both. The D1 is basically the Libra ascendant. So therefore Venus matters, and D9 is Aquarius ascendant with Venus as the Raja Yoga Karak planet in the Lagna. Okay, so here again you see Moon Rahu. So this is again a good position of Moon because it's in the Labhasthana. Although here you see Gulika in the 6th, which gives him the disease, but also gives him the power to fight the disease. And therefore you see, now let's look at D30. In D30 here, you see Moon is with Rahu Ketu again in the here in the 3rd house. Okay. Again, you see here an exalted Saturn. You see here Venus in the Lagna. You see here Jupiter in the 5th house. You see overall a blessed horoscope. And you see a Moon which is with Rahu Ketu and the Bhrugu point in the 3rd house in Aquarius. So again, this becomes a kind of a stable Moon. This is a Moon which is not swayed by emotion too much, which will not be taken, which will not be disturbed or destabilized by rapid success or crippling failure. This is a Moon which is likely to maintain its equanimity. Okay, so this is about Akbar. And therefore you see a lot of blessings in the chart. You see Jupiter and you see both the benefics blessing the chart abundantly. Okay, and then you go to Aurangzir. Now here you find Aurangzir, the whole vibration shifts a little bit. Now in D1, you see that the Moon is exalted in Kritika. In fact, almost at the exaltation point. So this is a man who was extremely intelligent, sharp. And you see Moon is with Saturn. So this is a man who was very, very practical, extremely practical, very intelligent. And the Moon is in the 4th house in the Kendra. So very well placed Moon in D1. It enables him to strategize very well, to create conspiracies at home very effectively. Again, this chart has Jupiter in the Lagna. So there is a lot of support of Jupiter. Now D9. In D9, you see here that the Moon is in the 12th house. So here you see that the moon actually becomes in 12th house. This 12th house moon would mean possibly that this man was also a somewhat spiritual minded, because it is well known that, I mean, he was an Islamic fanatic possibly, but he was also somebody who was very devout and very religious. So therefore, the 12th house moon would indicate that. And again, you see here that Mars is aspecting the moon directly in the 12th house. So he was disturbed. It was a moon which was disturbed, but essentially the D1 position is very good. Now let's look at the Trimsamsa. Now here you see moon is again exalted in Taurus in the 12th house, okay, with Uranus. Now here the Lord of the second is in the 12th. The Uranus part indicates suddenness in thinking sometimes, or sudden decisions, which may not have always worked in his favor. Okay, here you see, of course, the sun in the Lagna and Mars opposite it. That indicates certain strength of character, certain royal demeanor, also a tendency towards aggression. The 9th house, Jupiter, Venus are befitting a king truly. But the moon in the 12th house doesn't really serve me much well here, because you again find that the moon is in 6-8 relationship with Mercury here. Okay, so that's a little bit about the D30. So you got a flavor of this. It kind of builds a whole picture of a person's personality, and this can be extended to other grahas, in medical astrology. So if we are studying Venus, say for example, then we will look at Venus in different divisional charts in D1, D3, D9, D30, for example, sometimes D12 as well. Okay, so with this, I shall stop my sharing, and I hope this was useful. I'm recording this video at night, so the clarity of the face of my face may not be so much. However, I think that the swaying coconut trees in the background are soothing, as much as the ocean waves are relaxing. Thank you so much, and I hope this was useful. Please leave your comments, in below this video. I'd like to know what you feel about videos such as these. This is the first time I have created a video on a divisional chart in a little bit empirical way, sharing with you what my current level of knowledge is. I am open to be enriched by you. If you have any more information about D30, please tell me about it. I'll be very happy. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye.